Those kids look up to you.
Yeah, I know.
You know, but you don't know. When people look up to you, you don't get to be selfish.
But families stick together, you said it yourself.
I know what I said.
I want to fight, I can help.
You're not ready.
You're strong now, just like you were always meant to be. Jinx is perfect.
It's because I care about you is likely one of the most harshly varied statements to be uttered. Personally, I've heard it used to justify the most manipulative and controlling behavior I've ever had to have thrust upon me, and also as a statement that caps off some of the most kind and considerate gestures I've ever received. How can one concept cover such a wide range of human interaction? It seems today I'm continuing the years-long theme I've had of questioning concepts that we usually assume to be positive, looking deeper into them and drawing out their worst aspects to wonder if we should reevaluate our preconceptions. I will try to be a bit more positive about it today, though, as the point of these videos isn't to say that everything is actually terrible, but simply to point out that almost anything has the potential to be. I believe that recognition is key to actually keeping those great aspects of humanity as wonderful as they are, because if we never consider how they could turn negative, then we'll never know when they actually do. Arcane struck me as the perfect series to address this topic with, because across its entire run it showcases cascading pairs of characters, each one influencing another of the next set to create a quite complicated and at times difficult to navigate web of interactions, but one which is very rewarding if it can be untangled. It showcases care from its best aspect to its worst, and how they can sometimes be the same. Today, looking at Vander, Vi, Powder, and Silco, we'll dredge through those depths and see if we can pick out a cohesive idea of how we can ensure our care in the real world will always hold by its true and pure intent. Of course, we'll begin where the series does with Vander and Vi. Vander was once a much different figure for the Undercity, formerly the revolutionary who led them across the bridges to combat Piltover. He was much more akin to the desires of Silco than his future self that we witness. This assault failed quite gravely, costing many of Zaun's residents their lives for nothing more than increased pressure from the city above. And this didn't stop Vander from fighting with vigor. Even as everything had already gone wrong, he kept up his deadly charge. That is, until he witnesses Powder and Vi, two sisters newly orphaned from his actions, their parents dead in the chaos. Unable to push forward anymore with this direct example to the cost of his actions, Vander drops his weapons to be able to carry the sisters, leaving his past conflicts behind for a new future. Instead of fighting for an uncertain future with exceptional risk, he gets more directly involved in assistance, raising some of the orphaned children of Zaun as his own. It's almost literal. He decides to raise the kind of future he'd like to see through long-term dedication rather than short-term combat. But that resolve is later tested because of Vi's mistakes. Young, full of energy, and looking to prove herself as the daughter of a legend, she, Powder, Milo, and Clanger plan a heist into Piltover, specifically the workshop of inventor and future council member Jace Talos, who we went very in-depth on in the last video. Despite Vander's warnings not to target the top side, Vi sees it as the natural course of action. The top has everything and they have nothing, so why take from their own side when the other has so much they won't even notice that some of it is gone? Of course, unknown to her, Vander has a fragile peace deal worked out with Grayson, the sheriff enforcer. As long as neither side provokes the other, everything will remain as it is. So, to preserve what they have, Vander sacrifices the ability to claw out more from Piltover, as Vi wishes to do. It's quite natural why he believes this. He once risked everything for more and only lost most of what they had to gain nothing. It's like if someone offered you a 1 to 50 odds with a minimum wager, bet 100,000 to win 5 million. Would you take that? Yeah, in one of those features, you're a millionaire who never has to struggle ever again, but in 49 of them, you're in enough debt you can never get out and cease to struggle. We talked about heroes before who could always take that risk, but fighting spirit cannot overcome every situation. Can you say you'd be able to sleep knowing that sons and daughters lost their mothers and fathers, even if you were pushing for a good cause? Naturally, Vi's heist goes wrong, leading to a destroyed apartment building, a street tussle, a lost hall, and a flood of enforcer attention seeking to catch the culprits so the council can have their big show of punishment. It doesn't take long for Vander to learn what happened, scolding the kids for their actions. But Vi steps up alone and says,
If you want to be mad at me, but you're the one who always says we have to earn our place in this world.
and that sentence essentially encapsulates what's good about Vander's care, even though it's an argument between them. The heist going wrong was really a stroke of bad luck. Vi didn't do anything worthy of a war between the cities. It was the combination of Jace's secret work and a reactionary government looking to make a show which turned a few kids proving themselves into destruction. But even knowing this, and even defending her decision to go against Vander's wishes, she takes responsibility for those indirect consequences. She's the leader who they followed into action, and even if what happened isn't what she planned, it's what they have to deal with because of her. She's not quite at giving up the fight entirely for them levels, but this is the same thing Vander went through with his rebellion. Did he intend for children to be orphaned? Of course not. But did it happen because of him, even if that because includes a lot of injustice? Yes. It's clear he imparted what he learned, that he's stressed to her a good sense of responsibility, yet without ever outright crushing her desires and dreams, even if he knows how much they can hurt. He guides her away from mistakes, but without excessive restriction against them. I think we can see why this is a tough situation he handled relatively well by looking at Jace once more for a second. Because of this heist gone wrong, his research is brought to light, judged to be too dangerous, and set to be destroyed. He's brought before the council and decided to be exiled, saved only by desperate pleas to be expelled from the university instead. Despite this though, that same night Jace looks to remove himself from the world. Even with an always decent life before him due to his family, this is still his decision. And it's because of a short-sighted council. Without examining the situation, expulsion looks a lot better than exile. But to Jace, it's the same thing. His work was his life. He was dedicated to that which saved him, what gave him a life. Either way, they've taken his life itself away from him. By outright destroying his desires, they destroyed him as well. While it would have been a much greater task, the best thing they could have done would have been to guide that desire, watch it carefully, and help it develop into something much more safe and controlled. Don't reward him for messing up, but take the positive traits of his passion and nurture them. If you seek to stamp it out entirely, you'll only drive someone to desperation, seen pretty clearly as he and Victor break into the lab and risk it all to prove Hextech can work in a single night. It was a huge risk for everyone, and the council brought it on themselves. The better case is what we see with Vander. Vi is an absolute handful for him, and the entire first act is him cleaning up for her mistake. But isn't that what care is? Seeing the good in someone and dealing with the bad because you love them, directing them to be better with that spark, putting in the time and energy to help them without rewarding their bad behavior? Vander does clean up after Vi, seeking to prevent the worst that she alone wouldn't be able to, but he also encourages her to do what she can and to know for the future not to make the same mistakes. We can never prevent those we care for from messing up, and sometimes we will have to be the ones to clean it up. What matters is how we deal with it when they do and how much they begin to rely on us if we keep cleaning up for them. It's how we direct those consequences into a better future. Even though he's very upset with her, he also asks this before he leaves.
You did put that idiot on his arse, though, right?
It's a funny little remark, mostly a joke, but it does showcase this well. Fighting may not solve her problems, but the strength it takes to fight isn't a bad thing. Being proud of besting someone seeking to harm you isn't a bad thing. Even if he doesn't want her to be combative, he encourages the elements of it which are positive within her. That's the challenge of true care. Anyone can say, don't fight, that's bad. But only someone who cares can look at why you do, pull out the positive traits, and encourage you to genuinely be better as who you are, not just adhere to a one-size-fits-all mold. Exactly like where the council fails its citizens. Most notably, Vander says,
Those kids look up to you. When people look up to you, you don't get to be selfish. But whatever happens, it's on you.
he imparts quite the evergreen lesson. You can have big ambitions, you can have the good qualities that go into them, but you have to be ready for big costs to boot. The world isn't ideal, and sadly, it's on you. And Vi takes everything he says to heart. Recognizing that the results of her actions may bring war between the cities, but knowing it can be stopped, she sends the secret message to Grayson owning up to the heist, which would drain all the building pressure about to boil over onto others. It's not entirely fair, nowhere even close to it. It's not desirable in any way for him or her. No one wants to watch someone they care about be locked away for years and years. But this was the lesson. It just so happens that the circumstances grew out of hand. She has to take it. Where the tragedy really comes in is that Vander's care made Vi a better person. She learned the lesson perfectly and applied it. She stopped fighting and started caring directly like he once did. She would have been a great leader for the lanes once Vander was gone because all of the teachings took hold. She would have had the power and grit to back up her leadership, but the knowledge to know when to fight and when not to. And then the whole lesson gets torn apart. The care which developed her into someone caring herself undoes the entire thing because care can be selfish just as much as it's selfless. Vander pays her cost. He realizes what she's doing at the last second and rushes in to take her place, locking Vi away just as the enforcers arrive, apprehend the culprits, and he says it's actually him. Grayson, knowing that's not true, accepts somewhat begrudgingly since it upsets their personal peace deal, but Vander assures her Benzo will be able to maintain that. However, a surprise attack from Silco throws the entire situation off, killing Grayson and Benzo and leaving a handcuffed Vander unable to do anything about it before he's abducted. To be extremely fair, what Vander did is care. Just like before, he's cleaning up her mess because he loves her. It's a very situationally selfless thing to take that time behind bars for someone, especially a child who would be destroyed by that time. But I say situationally selfless because Vander had more on his plate than just a daughter. He had an entire city which needed his control. We see that once he's gone, it devolves into a den of vice driven by Silco, and maybe Benzo could have stopped this if he lived, but we know for a fact Vander could, and that he decided to possibly give up the fate of everyone for the fate of one. In a much different way from before, this has the same effect as his fighting, hurting everyone for selfish care. And it goes against every lesson he taught her, taking responsibility, owning up, dealing with the pain of your own failures. The harder, more responsible path would have been for him to sit by and let it happen, to live every day knowing he couldn't protect her and everyone at once. He didn't do that. He taught her one wrong lesson, which undid years of good ones. I think this is expressed in how his story ends. Kidnapped by Silco, Vi and company, without Powder, go on a mission to save him, leading to a cascading of events where Powder does go out and uses her remaining proto-hex tech to blow up the building, forcing Vander to once again take up his fists and fight, his desperation far enough that when backstabbed by Silco, he even ingests Shimmer to keep going, dying after taking the brunt of the last explosion for Vi's sake. His care, wanting to protect his daughter, leads him to become this monster. And what else could he have done? This is exactly what care is, as we said, taking on the worst of situations because we see the good in someone who caused them. A lot of extra words to say we fight for the ones we love. But this shows not just that it's a long and difficult path, not just that it can drive us to be selfish, but that it can outright destroy us too. Like when we're so committed to situations we couldn't help what someone else's mistakes are. Some lessons will only ever be learned through hurt. That's how Vander learned his. Through all the cuts and bruises of war, he found a hurt that he couldn't ignore or hide from. The sight of 2 orphans he created. The cost of his actions was quite vivid and right there, and he decided to begin paying it himself, every day raising the living reminder of what he did. We learn through being hurt, but care really doesn't like hurt. It doesn't like to see the object of its efforts be in pain. And this puts it at odds with its own goal, the best life for them, because that best life is reached through tough lessons we have to learn. If we prevent them from feeling that hurt, they'll just keep making mistakes themselves until eventually our care destroys us so much we won't be able to clean up after them, and they'll have no idea what to do. Care is how we shape the next generation to be even better, but also how we can lead them to be a lot worse than us. How Vander cares for Vi then leads into how Vi cares for Powder, split into two sections across the time skip. In the first arc, Vi is fighting for Powder's future. She's quite focused on the idea of one day, that sometime in the future things will be better, from telling Powder that one day her gadgets will work to stating directly,
I want Powder to have more than that, and I'm willing to fight for it.
Her sights are quite firmly set on the future, which isn't a bad thing, but that's a big part of how her own mistakes in Care come to be. Now, to be fair, the future isn't all of her concern. She takes a lot of time to assist and encourage Powder in the present. She tells her on their heist that she's ready to make the leap, just the same as the older kids, and gives her the last little save that she needed to do it. She takes time out to express the bad days they've all had to brighten her worst one. She actively cares for her sister. But just like how she ends this moment of encouragement with a look to the future, she puts too much weight there overall. Powder's only real bright spot is Vi. Klinger and especially Milo are pretty outright mean to her, and when she seems most happy is when she's just with her sister. Powder never asked for someone to fight for a better, brighter future for her. All she wanted was to be with the person she loved most. So why did her sister leave against everything she wanted and against everything Vander taught her? When Vi makes her daring attempt to save their adoptive father, she leaves Powder behind to protect her, a mirror to Vander locking Vi away for a similar reason. And in this, she provides everything her younger sister needed to make her own mistakes. She was panicked, alone, worried that everyone she loved had left and was about to die, and there was nothing she could do about it. Hours, maybe days would pass, and probably no one would come back in the world, and she knew it would be completely over. Of course she's going to do something reckless here. Wouldn't the best thing Vi could have done been to stay with the person whose future she was so insistent on fighting for, and respect the sacrifice of the person who allowed her to keep doing so? It's the same sort of thing Vander did when he dropped his fists to carry them. The hardest fight isn't always going out and beating people with your strength. It is physically demanding, and it's not easy, but it's temporary, quite short and to the point. The harder fight, to be quite Vinland Saga-esque about it, that is the path of a true warrior, is to take the daily fight, one that never ends until the day you die. To find a purpose with more consideration rather than just conquest. The path of caring for others directly rather than beating others for a risky future that we may never see. This is where we see all of Vander's lessons begin to break down in Vi's brand of care due to his last action for her. Where he once taught her to sacrifice through the peaceful path, she now charges down the violent one. This is all still care. Fighting for others despite its flaws is just as valid and in many situations must be done. Vi still clearly cares. But when we care about someone's future, are we truly caring about them? I think this mentality can make us blind to what they really need. Not everyone wants someone to go out brawling for them to stake a claim in the future. Sometimes they just need a sister to be a point of warmth in a cold world. And we don't all have grand dreams, and we don't need to. All Vi had to give her were the simple pleasures of a common life. Isn't that easier than fighting, the thing Powder and Vander both didn't want her to do? But she did it anyway because it could provide the best future possible. It was a risk. Care can lead us to do too much for other people, more than they ever needed and more than they ever asked for. After the time skip, Vi is making a similar mistake. Instead of fighting for her sister's future, she's fighting for her past. Like how she showed her focus then, now it's shown in how she never refers to her sister by Jinx, the new name she chose, and how most of her time spent speaking on her is reminiscing about their past. There is a good reason for this new focus. Their past was clearly more healthy. Even if she didn't have the greatest support system then, it wasn't a manipulative pull, and her moments of happiness weren't built on insanity. Anyone would know that the past is better for her. But why do they have to go back to it? Jinx is, in part, a result of Vi's failures. To acknowledge her as Jinx is to admit those failures, in line with Vander's lesson. The choice here would be to accept the changes her sister went through and move forward from there. Just as he couldn't undo the death of her parents, Vi couldn't undo years of her sister's changes. And this is the next step in Care making us do what someone never asked for. Just like she never asked for a fight, does Jinx ever ask for the past to return? She's quite clear about what happened while Vi was in Stillwater. She says directly that things changed when she left and that she changed too. She bluntly states,
Stop calling me that. It's Jinx now.
whether this decision was fully coherent, whether it was healthy or not, it's the one she chose. It's an active part of who she is. And here's someone who cares about her, but only stresses it in who she was in the past. Vi says they can go back to a healthier time, but that also means rejecting who her sister is now. And did Powder ever actually enjoy being herself? When Vi mentions the past, it seems more to overwhelm Jinx than to bring her any kind of comfort. She'll bring up Milo and Clanger, but Milo was a very negative force on her, and so this form of him that she builds is literally building her past mistakes and doubts into the future. She's tortured because she can't let go of that past, so why would she want to go back to it? It was full of doubt and failure and weakness. The path should be forward. And as we see now, it was forward. She's quite confident, as strong as her sister, if not more, and while she fails at times, it's always in the pursuit of a greater success that garners her praise. At the end of the day, even if it's just torture and uncertainty still, it's a brand of it that she chose to see through. Jinx proves in the series ending that she could have been free of Silco physically at any time. He's rather weak, all things considered, and she could have killed him in this way at any time, even if there was a psychological hold. There was some aspect of both survival and choice to this life she led, but all Vi stresses of it is survival.
You did what you had to do to survive. Me too. It's okay.
But that's not all it was. No matter how messed up it was, she did love Silco. She enjoyed some part of it all, at least some little bit, and it wasn't just survival, and even if it was, she became someone new through it all, and that can't be neglected. We can see where this begins to overlap with Care because it shows that extreme care can make us blind to someone. We can lose them by caring too much, because if we only see what's best for them, then are we actually seeing them? We don't always want what's best for ourselves. Sometimes we want to make mistakes and get hurt by them. We'll see something that we know is awful for us and going to hurt and then say, I want that anyway. It's a tricky situation for everyone who cares for us. What do you do in that situation? How do you manage trying to steer someone to the best path while also respecting their decisions that aren't healthy? How do we manage wanting to give our all to making the best life for someone when they don't want it? It's a very harsh truth because Vi went through a lot to care this much for Powder, but just like in the past, this much care isn't something she asked for. It was just something Vi decided to do. It's hard to call that kind of dedication unwanted or a mistake, but it was in this case. If she respected Powder's change into Jinx, would this terrible ending have been prevented? Would they have lived on together healthily? Would the destruction of an entire city not have happened? If we only see the best someone could have, we're rejecting that the entire spectrum is a part of who they are. We'll lose them even though we fight for them.
I thought maybe you could love me like you used to, even though I'm different.
The best of intentions and the most of care isn't always something good. There is nothing in this world that we can stick to without consideration. Of course, the train keeps rolling into the next pair of characters with Silco and Jinx. They help round out the theme of care by showing the other side. While these first two cases were quite clearly loving relationships which were corrupted by a few inescapable facts of life, Silco and Jinx appear to be a downright awful combination, which under the surface can be seen to represent some of the core aspects in love and care at their purest. It starts with quite possibly the embodiment of care in the moment which made me decide to talk about the series at all. After Powder destroys the facility where Silco was keeping Vander, inadvertently messing up a successful escape attempt, Vi has one of her few moments of outright weakness as she hits Powder and says she really is a Jinx, before leaving her alone with the wreckage. It's another aspect of the tragedy that if she had taken Powder instead of leaving her, like she did before, this all would have been avoided. One moment where Faith lacked cascading, seeing that the violence she adopted for the sake of her sister's future only led her to being violent with that very sister. Jinx's adoptive father dead, her sister leaving her behind in cruelty, her friends all gone, she has nothing at all, and around the corner here comes Silco, knife that killed her father in hand, all his plans seemingly ruined, and he's kind to her. He takes time for her. She's at her worst ever, the weakest moment of her entire life. She has nothing to offer. There is no benefit to Powder right here. This is her worst. This is where he accepts her. Isn't that what we're so often told love is? For better or worse, for richer or poorer, for sickness or health. Isn't this part of what Vi failed to do in looking to who Powder was, not who Jinx became? Silco recognizes her pain with a glance to Vander, his own source of being left behind by a sibling figure betrayed and abandoned. After she throws herself into his arms, all he does is think about that fact, embrace her in relation, and say, "It will be okay," before he begins to stroke her dark desires. And even with that subtle hint of manipulation to come, we do see genuine care. We see what Powder wanted from Vi, not a grand future and complete life, but a simple embrace and the knowledge that someone will stay by her side. Silco fills the gaps of care left by Vander and Vi's mistakes of good intention. This is what makes care so complex. The villain can be the caring one while the hero lies dead as a monster. That's the thought that made this series something so special to me, that the gentle, genuine care of an evil man showed through. Care is good, but that doesn't mean it leads to good things. Here, it somewhat naturally leads to dependency. Jinx's entire being hinges on how Silco is feeling about her at that very moment. She can go from hating him for lying to loving him again like usual with just a few words. He is her entire world, and that arose naturally because of how he found her. By giving care to someone with nothing, he became everything. And what the hell can we do about that? When we see someone at their lowest possible point, are we just supposed to say, "No, care would be too dangerous here, I must leave you"? Of course, it's what they need, and we should provide. The real monster would be someone who's willing to say no in that kind of situation. There's nothing to be done about it. We can't help how big a part of the world we can become through care. Doing the right thing can cascade easily into becoming the wrong one. What we can help, though, is what we do with that fact. Their situation is only somewhat natural. Silco becomes her whole world through circumstance, but keeps himself as it through manipulation for his own selfish desires. His interactions with her are absolutely brimming with manipulative language like this.
I'm doing this for us, Jinx. You're strong now, just like you were always meant to be. Jinx is perfect. I am your family. Everyone else betrays us. I need you, now more than ever.
This is the other end of where Vi went wrong. Where her sister was too unaccepting of her worst traits, Silco is purposefully too accepting of the same ones. The danger, the chaos, it all aids his plans. In part, he accepts her because she is a benefit to him, even if she also comes with some heavy costs. In a way, she's like the idea of love itself because of that. A lot of cost that we deal with because we find benefit in it. That's what Vander did with Vi that was so positive, mostly because the benefit for him was love itself. But here, it's more mercenary. It's not a cost and benefit fully derived from positive feelings, but also from goals and what can be physically gained from someone. Jinx is like a profit maker for Silco, since she's what leads him to his greatest leaps forward towards Zaun, even if she sometimes also holds them back a bit. But I think he's very caught up in his own madness here, not quite realizing how manipulative he can be. To him, this future is the ideal, it is goodness itself. And it's also because he does love Jinx from his first moments to the last. When she kills him and then rushes over realizing what she's done, he dies saying this.
I never would have given you to them, not for anything. Don't cry. You're perfect.
And there's absolutely no reason for him to lie right here. In his final moments, he speaks the same truth he always believed. He would have given up his entire empire to keep her. He's a weak man who found someone that finally understood what he felt, and he clung to that. He's not saying all of these things out of a completely active desire to manipulate, but because he himself is an unhealthy person who is finding value in unhealthy traits. His care can be so dangerous because he is dangerous. It is an aspect of emotion which relies on two parties at all times, and so it will always be derived from the state of those two people. Care for him will be something almost inherently unhealthy, but as far as he knows, it's something true and pure. Even if it's influenced by his selfish motivations, to him, they are not selfish. When he's accepting the worst parts of her, it's not in exactly the same way as Vi rejecting them, because he doesn't actually see them as negative aspects of her. As different people, they'll accept and reject different things as positive and express care for them out of a different motivation as such. Vander raised Vi to be like him, and Silco raised Jinx to be like him. Care is based on our own lens and requires balance. It can't be praising everything we love and rejecting everything we hate. It has to be actively considering which parts of those are the best for someone, what it seems they desire for themselves, and then fostering a healthy mix of the two. And we have to do this for ourselves. Part of love is finding someone who fills the gaps that we're lacking, fitting together like some terrible puzzle metaphor that I'm sure a billion cheesy 2000s rom-coms probably made. But if that is all someone is for us, i.e. if we're only caring for them because of what we need, for their benefits to us, then we ourselves will become reliant on them. We'll never grow through our weakness. This is another way where Silco's manipulative aspects were also natural. When he says he needs her, he genuinely means it. At the start of the series, we see him quite flawlessly giving himself these shots with all the flourish of a mad villain. But as the series progresses, and after Jinx has been doing it for some time, we see how shaky and nervous he is about even thinking to do it himself. By making her reliant on him, he also became reliant on her for everything he lacked, for his weakness. Remember his speeches about the weak fighting dirty to overcome the strong? That's all he can do because he is weak. Part of why he praises Jinx's destructive aspect is because he needs that destruction to make up for his own lack of power. It's reckless and self-harming, of course, but that's the cost of it all. That's the real power that
Comes to those who will do anything to achieve it.
This last section just covered a lot at once. It is a disorganized mess that I've really struggled to organize because this entire relationship between Jinx and Silco is itself a disorganized and unholy mess. It's his own ideals and goals meshing with a genuine care to create this web of manipulation and things that look like lies but are actually truths that form a flip perspective from the other caring characters, and I don't think there is a way to truly organize it, which is fitting. It shouldn't be something that can be organized easily, or else it wouldn't feel true to who they were developed as. It's important that it's confusing because care can be confusing. Unpacking each element reveals two more that themselves only keep leading to more questions. And that's kind of how I feel about care overall. It's a mess. It's both how we're inspired to new heights and ideas, and then how we're torn down from those very same places. It will be how we express to someone how much they mean to us, how much pain we will take for them, but it'll also be how we express how much we can gain through them, how much pain we're willing to inflict on them. It'll make love look like evil and manipulation look like guidance. And then despite all of that variance, we'll do it anyway. For their worst or for their best, for their positive traits or their negative ones, all through our own lenses, we desperately try and understand their world to do what best we can for them. I think that's the only thing which can guide us to then truly guide them. We have to understand things, we have to understand them as best as possible. We can't care for anyone in the best way if we do not truly know them in the best way. Now, that's not to say that the little things can't help, though. If anything is clear from the series, it should be how impactful even the most basic gestures of care can be. From a warm embrace to that "how are you doing" text that we all put off for so long. Think about how you would feel getting those things even after a long wait. So they'd probably feel the same way, right? This is another video where I don't have an answer. I only have some simple suggestions and questions, and hope that through all of those words there was some insight gained into your own ideas on the topic. And of course, it was to try and understand my own feelings on it and consider them more now than I ever have before as well, because I have a real reason to now. So thank you for that, for letting me express a bit of my own care on the internet here for you, to continue working through my own complex mental state and put it on the internet and call it care for the entire world. It's a very special thing I get to do for a lot of people. So thank you very much for that. I'll leave you with 3 important links in the pinned comment. Twitter, Discord more importantly than Twitter, and then Patreon most importantly, where all these lovely people above me help me keep doing this every week, which is absolutely insane. But a big thank you to everyone, as always, for spending some time with me here today, and I hope you'll let me do that again sometime soon.